How's it going?
You're welcome, guys. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for being here.
If you have any questions for the Congresswoman that you'd like for her to answer, feel free to fill out one of these cards. You're welcome to fill out as many as you'd like, and by putting down your contact information, we're able to get back to you with an answer if we're not able to get to it tonight. So we'd be happy to have you fill these out.
If I think of one, I might be back up.
We'll be here the whole time. Thank you.
Which way up?
Hey Boneheads, I'm back out here in Tenino, Washington, this time with PNWT, Pacific Northwest Transparency. We're here to record the Democratic Congresswoman, Maria Perez, and see what she has to say. Stay tuned.
Should we sit back here? Should we sit for a second? My camera wipe in the goddamn car. My camera wipe.
The fun part's over. I hate to say.
Pull up a seat, sit on the floor. Make yourself.
Thank you everyone for coming. I want to thank Congresswoman Perez for coming and holding a town hall here tonight. And I want to thank everyone for attending. Welcome to Tenino if you don't live here. And I'll acknowledge the elected officials in the room that came down. And please, if I miss you, raise your hand. But I saw Commissioner Ty Menser. Thank you for attending. Some of the Tenino City Council members, John O'Callahan, Linda Godeback. We have Court Commissioner Amy.
Hi.
And did I miss anyone? Any other elected officials?
Bob's coming.
And Carolyn Mejia is on. Oh, just walked in the room. Everybody applaud for Thursday County Commissioner Carolyn Mejia. My name is Wayne Fournier. I'm the mayor for the city of Tenino, and I'm also tonight's moderator. So I'll be the one kind of keeping everybody in line and helping move this thing along to make sure everybody can get an equal chance to ask a question.
Is that why we have all our cups here?
Before passing it over to Congresswoman to talk about her work in Washington, I'd like to go over the format for tonight's town hall. As you showed up, you handed out cards. You were handed cards by staff members, Congresswoman's staff. Those cards will be collected by the staff and then handed in to me, and I will read those questions as they're given to me. If you have questions for the Congresswoman, you need to fill them out on the cards. If you have questions after your card has been answered or anything else that is outside of the cards, staff will be available after the event. After she gives an update on her work, I'm going to read out the questions one by one and allow her to answer your questions. We'll try to get to as many of the questions tonight as possible, so please help us by following the ground rules. I'm going to go over the ground rules now. Number one is no signs. This is not a political event. This is an official event, and the Congresswoman is here to answer your questions. This is not a political event. Please stick to the format. The format was selected to ensure we are able to get as many questions as possible, so please work with us to follow it. No questions or rebuttals from the crowd. Please reach out to staff afterwards if you'd like additional information or if you'd like to leave additional comments. We really want to focus on getting as many questions as possible tonight. Staff are here to help afterwards. Offensive language will not be tolerated, so please keep it clean. Refrain from disturbing the town hall. You're all here tonight to hear from Congresswoman and get your concerns addressed. Please don't impede the ability of your fellow community members from doing that. Please be civil. Let's keep the temperature as low as possible. so we can have the most productive town hall possible. So thank you, and now let's hear from the Congresswoman for a few minutes, and then we'll get into the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Mayor Wayne, for being here and moderating tonight. It's so great when we can have the our local leaders be part of the conversation and here to moderate. So, and also thank you to all of you who chose to be here tonight. Like, democracy is, it's work. It takes work to show up and to be involved, to be engaged. And so I have the utmost respect for all of you who have done the thing that's unusual. Like, so much of the political stuff is online and it feels so antagonistic and so impersonal. And I'm deeply grateful to all of you who have taken the time and the energy, like to be here and engage in democracy and make it work. It's an escalator. It's like doing the dishes. You do it to do it again. It's like never bought and paid for. It's something that's earned. And so I'm deeply grateful to all of you for being part of this discourse. Whether or not we agree about the issues, like having the chance to talk and you know, really engage on these is critical. So thank you. And I'd also like to say, like, thank you sincerely to Chief Auditor and the Tenino Police Department for being here. Can we get a round of applause? I know you guys have a lot on your plate, and it's really encouraging to have have folks who believe in the democratic process and believe in these dialogues also being with us. So thank you. And finally, thank you to the Kodiak Room for hosting us tonight. So definitely the nicest room I've ever done a town hall prep in. So thank you. And so it's great to be here with you all tonight with my years of legislative experience to answer your questions. You all know I was just elected in November, so we've got 8 months under my belt of being in DC and being back and forth. I have been home for the past several weeks. Typically, I fly back and forth to DC every 4 days to be in my time. Spend my time in Washington State and in the other Washington, and so it's just been really nice to get a month home with my family. I have a 2-year-old, and so that means that we've been doing a lot of potty training the last 4 months, which everyone's going to be really happy when we're out of diapers, I think. So it's a great time to be present and in the community, and I'm really excited about tonight particularly because I really wanted to do an in-person town hall in every county that I represent, and tonight is the last county. Thurston County is the last county for me to be in. And so with this, this is my 11th in-person town hall since being sworn in January, and so it's really exciting because now we've hit all 7, and as someone, I live in unincorporated Skamania County, so I'm really used to being sort of glossed over from our representatives, and it was really important to me to be present and available and accountable in all parts of the district, not just the parts that share my ideology or share my worldview, but with everyone that I represent and to be accountable. And so it's really important, and I'm grateful to have the chance to talk with you all tonight and hear what you're thinking about, because I think a lot of us are really tired of being told what we're thinking about and being told what's important to us by a sort of national media machine and a Facebook algorithm. And so it's just, I appreciate you all bringing your perspectives and your voice and your concerns here tonight. So I serve on the Ag and the Small Business Committee. Generally a member of Congress will get 2 committees. As a small business owner, it was really important, I had a bone to pick with the Small Business Administration. I feel like we could do a much better job of meeting businesses where they are and starting to do the hard work of bringing back American manufacturing and the small businesses that we all rely on. And so I'm really excited to be the ranking member on the subcommittee for rural development, energy, and supply chains. And then in Ag, Skamania County, where, my family has been in timber for 5 generations in Washington State. And so every year we see these giant wildfires and feel this threat growing behind us. Like, we all know the feeling of getting the call that there's like another fire near us. And so finding a way to urge more action and more urgency, and these federal behemoths, like we need real movement now. So it's been a huge honor to be on both committees, and I'm super grateful for the team. We've built a bipartisan team since I've been in office. My team's phenomenal. Gwen Palin's here in the back. She's a phenomenal. Gwen, can you raise your hand? So Gwen is a pit bull. She doesn't look like it, but Gwen and our team of caseworkers have returned over $430,000 back to taxpayers since we've been in office, being able to get answers on Social Security or IRS, those kinds of things. Like, Gwen is really a pit bull, and casework is one of the most meaningful ways that we can support our community. So if you've got anything that touches a federal agency, like, please do reach out. It's really important to us to be able to be useful and accountable, but we can't do that if we don't know about the issues. So please reach out to our casework team. And I also want to say, like, I read and listen to your letters. The average time for a member of Congress to return a letter from a constituent is 45 days in Congress. I think that my average right now is 14 days to get a letter back. So I feel a real sense of accountability, and like, I really do read those letters. So I think we've answered over 30,000 letters to date. So sincerely, like, please, if you're one of those people, thank you. And if you're not, you're welcome to join. With that, I think that we better start getting. I think we have a lot of questions. So thank you all who have submitted questions. So let's dive right in.
All right, we'll start the official portion, but first, we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'd all stand. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Derek Sanders, our sheriff in the back, thanks for joining us. Our first question of the evening is from Mr. Chris Kane. Question is, fuel costs in Washington. What can be done about this?
Yeah, so the federal fuel tax is about 13 cents per gallon. I think Washington State is up to 72 cents, I want to say, so substantial. And I actually think that this is something that people in Washington, D.C. have gotten backwards for a long time, particularly on my end of this political spectrum. So I was actually one of the only Democrats to vote with the Republicans on their energy bill. And there were a couple of reasons that I did that. One of which is that a lot of the sort of political thought has been that if we just tax gas and fossil fuels enough, people will stop using them. But what I see happening is that means that people in rural communities are the ones that end up paying the most. Like, I drive on average 4 hours a day to get my child to daycare because there aren't many daycare providers in rural communities. And people with like lower income, like, I've never bought a new car in my life. So if you raise the gas tax, right, then you are saying like the person driving, like, the 1980s Geo Metro is the one that should be paying for the transition to cleaner energy. And meanwhile, we are giving tax breaks to people driving Teslas. And like, I get that we need to advance electrification, but I think that when we use that to like spend, to support people who already have resources, we've sort of got that policy backwards. I actually believe that the best role that the federal government could be playing in transitioning, and by the way, like, I think the climate crisis is actually a crisis. Like, this is a real problem. But what the federal government's role should be is saying, like, let's make greener energy so cheap that it crowds out fossil fuels. That's how we should be getting at it, not by making fossil fuels more expensive, but by making clean energy so cheap that it crowds out the market and moves us in that way, so that it's not people at just the top. And I think that we can absolutely do that, but it takes a serious investment in different energy forms. I get that the fuel costs are very high. I think that policy has not moved it in the direction that it needs to. I think that similarly, we haven't invested in the nuts and bolts of a green transition. For instance, like, you don't have electrification without linemen. You don't have electrification without a real supply of transformers. Like, you need American manufacturing. You need more power lines put in. You need all of these things to happen in tandem. You can't just wish it into existence. And so we need a really pragmatic approach to a transition to cleaner energy.
Sorry, the 4-year-old in the front's eyes lit up when you said Transformers. Next question is from Jean Moust. I love homegrown and homemade. Can we get more agricultural land devoted to growing crops for clothing, example hemp and cotton, and more educational opportunities for manufacturing of commonly used products?
Oh, yeah, Jean, yes. We are on the same page there. Absolutely. I think that one of the big tragedies has been, that we have more and more moved to a culture of like cheap consumer goods, where we just throw them away in the landfill, and we don't have a relationship to what real quality means. There's a really great economics paper where they say they track the price of like a wool sweater from the 1950s today, and they find that actually like that cost of that sweater has gone way up. If you just look at like sweaters generally, you'll say, well, I can buy like a sweater from H&M or like fast fashion or just like cheap plastic sweaters. Like, that's cheap, but it doesn't last, and so that durability has gone out of our economic values. And with it, local manufacturing, local production. And so one of the biggest bills that will pass in Congress this year is the ag bill. It's our farm bill. And it's something that happens every 5 years, and so it's been a really good chance to learn about what's going on with local production of goods. And it feels like a lot of our agricultural policy has sort of been built and bent around supporting export products and commodities, and like, we need those too. We need corn. Like, that's the reality. We need feed corn. We need soybeans. But we also have seen a lot of my family lives in Whatcom County. Whatcom County used to have like tens of thousands of dairy farms, and today there's like under 1,000. It's just been a nosedive, and so we've lost the ability to buy local even if you want to do it. And I think that's the real tragedy, because with that, it means that we've just lost so many family farms. We've lost so much institutional knowledge about how to farm in a given area, what floods, what doesn't, and I think that there are some good federal programs, things like GusNIP, things that really point dollars back into supporting local farms. And I'll just hear for a minute, because I did a bunch of research. So SNAP, food benefits, that's one of the biggest parts of the Farm Bill. And in its inception, it was actually a very, very elegant program in 1954. The SNAP, and food stamps, was supposed to do three things. It was supposed to support rural agricultural markets. It was supposed to enhance nutrition of Americans, and it was supposed to reduce poverty. But I think that today, it is really doing a good job of reducing poverty, but it's really not doing a good job of increasing nutrition or supporting agricultural markets. You need all three things to work in tandem. But if you live in a rural community, you are 23% more likely to be enrolled and eligible for SNAP benefits. At the same time, right now, America is importing 40% of its fresh fruit and vegetables. 40% of the fresh fruits and vegetables the average American eats are imported from outside of the country, which is crazy. It is a huge national security risk to my way of thinking. And so how do we bend back food stamps and these programs to support rural agriculture? Like, it is not a coincidence that as rural poverty has gone up, farm income has gone down. Right now, it is only every dollar that you spend on food in America, only 11 cents makes it back to the farm. It's the lowest it's ever been since we've been tracking it. And so it's fewer and fewer pennies are making it back to the farm, and rural poverty's gone up. And so there's something fundamentally broken in the way these policies are being implemented. And I was talking to a farmer in Pacific County who was like, I moved out here because I wanted to grow food for the local school district. But the school district does not have the administrative capacity to navigate the federal program that would allow it to get a contract with me. So you see these like big programs that have great ideas, but they're so complex to administer, they never make it to where they should. So there's a lot that's deeply broken. I think that there's a lot of reframing that needs to be done. Like, I think that the green movement should really be oriented around like the local movement of like local regional economies, local manufacturing, local production. That is the best, I think, and so I'm really excited about a lot of the work that I'm seeing happen at the local and regional level, but it's we need all the allies we can get in fighting that fight.
Thank you. Next question is from Mr. Martin Miller. Do you still support Antifa?
Okay, thank you, Martin, for the question. So just like oversharing here, my father immigrated from Mexico. The reason that he immigrated was because of left-wing violence that shut down the universities in Mexico at that time. So I actually have, I have a real bone to pick with left-wing violence. It's really strange to be now accused of being in cahoots with this ideology that has taken so much from my family personally. I am not in cahoots with Antifa. I believe that political violence is one of the biggest potential threats to our democracy. So thank you, Martin, for the question. And thanks for the chance to talk about it.
Thank you. Next question, Deacon Latinich, laborers. Please brag about IIJA, CHIPS, and BBB. Your work for working families needs known.
Good to see you, Deacon. Thank you for coming by. I think that one of my primary roles, especially as a junior member of the legislature, newer member, is making sure that our federal dollars make it back to our district. It's advocating and positioning us to get those dollars back. And so the Inflation Reduction and the IIJA, these have been important opportunities to get dollars back to our community. So we got $40 million for a broadband project in Lewis County. We were able to get $25 million for a raise grant to. So basically, Washougal has had a train that stops on the tracks, backs up the highway. It's prevented emergency responders from moving through. So we've been able to get dollars back locally to address some of these infrastructure things. And I think that's at the heart of what we should be doing with our federal dollars, is these really nuts and bolts projects of investing in the infrastructure, in the things that we pass on generationally to the next community. So I am really fierce in my belief that we have got to get sort of a return to basics. So what they used to call earmarks, now they want you to call them community investment projects. And their persistence, I think, is a sort of it's sort of this acknowledgement of the fact that many of these federal grant programs are so complex that smaller governments are never going to jump through those hoops. Like, the reason that the department is applying for these grants is because they don't have the personnel. And then you want one full-time employee to navigate the administration of these dollars that only pays for their job, right? So it's gotten crazy, but these earmarks are really the acknowledgement of that sad reality. And so in the short term, we're exercising them. So almost all of my earmark projects were these really nuts and bolts: sewer, water, water systems, biosolids, these things that really touched every person's life in the community. It's like, I can't, I've talked to so many people who are like, I can't handle $100 or $170 monthly fee from the city. So what are we going to do about this? So I think that focus on nuts and bolts investment in infrastructure is something that pays dividends. It grows our workforce. It grows the quality and quantity of skilled tradespeople that we have available in our region. It's just this long-term investment that I think really, we're really going to, a lot of fads come and go, but investing in infrastructure and quality bridges, quality roads, quality sewer, like, those are things that pay dividends for generations when they're done right.
Next question is from Jody Stoltz. Where are you with fixing the gap in SNAP bennies?
I think what Jody's pointing to is that there were all of these funds for SNAP benefits during COVID that expanded. They were, school lunch, or all of these programs were expanded. And I have to be super candid here. Like, we are fighting. We are fighting to keep the programs minimally funded in the minority. As the minority. So I don't see those higher levels that we saw during COVID continuing, at least in the short term. I think that there's an opportunity for what I hope is that we're able to transition to more support for regional, local farms. I've spent a lot of time talking on our farm bill listening tours with our local producers, and how do we streamline access to these programs for regional producers. But it's going to be we're going to have to tighten our belt on a lot of things and figure out how to do more with less in the short term.
Next question is from Bonnie Guidmar. And the question is, why is there not more visibility regarding misinformation spread about her political views?
Thank you, Bonnie, for the question. And I think that part of it is it's right. So we have 774,000 people in the district, and you can see the people that come to events that actually, and that's why I appreciate you all so much for being here tonight. The chance to talk and be in dialogue directly. I'm not in charge of any national narrative. I'm not in charge of what Breitbart or Fox or Slate or any other national news media says about me. All I can do is show up and be available and come to town halls and talk with you directly about the work that I'm doing and why I'm taking the votes that I'm taking. And so I really value you all coming to these and talking with your communities. And I think one thing that is really useful is if you're able to sign up for my newsletter. If you're able to sign up, we give updates regularly. And on my website, I also often put out statements about any vote that I've taken or why I came to vote the way that I do. And so I don't have a big publicity budget. I'm going to have to choose between funding caseworkers to help people navigate the VA or advertising. I'm going to go with caseworkers every day. So it's really important for us to be in direct communication. And, there's certainly, I think that any time that you are doing something unusual. I believe that right now I am one of the most bipartisan voters in Congress. And so you will annoy people on both sides. When you're doing that, like you're gonna annoy people. And that's just gonna generate a certain amount of pontificating and trash talking or whatever you want to call it. And I believe that I vote with, my party 8 out of 10 times, but I vote with my district 10 out of 10 times. And so my accountability is to you all ultimately, and not any political ideology or any like news media outlet. So really appreciate the chance to be in direct communication.
Next question from Vivian Eason. What will you do to stop the federal government overreach on the Endangered Species Act that has stopped our affordable housing in unincorporated Thurston County? This hurts builders and low-income in South Thurston County.
Yeah, so my mom is from Forks, Washington, which you guys might know is sort of the epicenter of the spotted owl fiasco. And somebody challenged me once. They were like, "Why? Stop calling it a fiasco. It's not a fiasco." I'm like, do you know what they're doing with spotted owls today? They're going out with basically like potato guns and beanbagging them, because it turns out that a lot of like the barred owls are still out competing the spotted owls even today with all of the habitat work that's been done. The spotted owls are still not competitive and thriving, and so. I think that a lot of this stuff ultimately is not moving policy in the way that it needs to. Like we've seen projects in Arizona. I was talking to I think it was Arizona, New Mexico, those southwest states, and they were talking about a big solar project that couldn't happen because it would have endangered a turtle. And so at oftentimes like it feels like the ESA is it is effective in protecting a specific species, but not effective in protecting the broader environment or moving us in the broader direction. Because it's like when she's pointing directly to its impact on housing, and it's like, okay, like you don't have affordable housing, you don't have starter homes. What does that mean? Like ultimately that's a pressure moving people towards homelessness. Like what's the environmental impact of homelessness on a species? Like then you have people in camps on this protected land, right? So I think that we need a broader, more holistic view of what these policies are actually doing on a local level, on a specific level. So it's nuanced, and I think often federal policy is this sort of mallet, and like maybe we need a chisel and not a mallet all of the time.
Next question from Bob Ayal. Can any steps be taken to streamline the application process for small minority businesses to certify federally as disadvantaged businesses to take advantage of federal infrastructure stimulus money?
Yeah, I think we see that. So I can speak to my personal experience. So when I was, my husband and I own an auto repair and machine shop. It's like an independent shop, so that means we're not affiliated with any dealership. We're not the big guys on the field at all. And we used to have this crazy landlord who, I have so many good stories about him. But so I knew that we needed to buy our building. When you are in an industry like automotive, where there might be environmental concerns, like banks aren't super excited to work with you. And so we went to the SBA, which is the lender of last resort for small businesses, to try and purchase a building. I happen to have a degree in economics. It literally took me a year to navigate that loan process from the SBA. And the whole time I was trying to buy commercial property, I would see these automotive shops that had been a shop since like the 50s get turned into like condos or trendy co-working spaces or tattoo shops or like coffee shops, And like I like coffee, I like tattoos, but we need auto shops. Like we need the dirty stuff. Like we need the working level stuff. You don't get the other stuff without fixing stuff in the trades. And so it was super frustrating to me because I felt like these investment vehicles we're out there snapping up property, and people that are actually working for a living aren't able to access these federal dollars because the programs are so complex. And so I think that it's really, I would say especially in rural Washington, when we look down the horizon of what's coming for rural Washington, like I believe that climate change really is a crisis and that we are going to see a lot of migration to rural Washington state. Like Texas is getting hotter every year. Those people are going to start coming here. And so it's really important that now small businesses are able to buy their buildings, that we're able to build generational businesses and not just the investment banks are snapping up property. So it is critical that we are reforming programs like the SBA 504 program or the 7A program. And so right now we're in the middle of reforming the SBA is working on reforming their 504, 501 to make it more accessible. Just put it in human terms, speed up the timeline. The 7A program is next, and so with regards to the question about like minority access in particular, I think one of the really interesting things about small businesses is that like minorities actually are a lot more likely to be small business owners because you might not have the family network that can get you a job at an established company, and so you're like, well, I'll start my own dry cleaner, I'll start my own food cart, so supporting small businesses is part and parcel of supporting like all this diversity.
Next question is from Peter Moulton. Status of Farm Bill, especially energy title.
Yeah, that is the big question, Peter. We're all waiting to see. So we've been gone for we've been like home out of DC, and so we've got. I would say that I actually think the chair, G.T. Thompson, is a guy that really has, he's a hard worker, he's a good communicator. I think that he's been a good chair broadly. So I'm hopeful that he can help us navigate and that we can get to an agreement. There is this big looming threat of a government shutdown. Congress seems to be in a position where it's sort of hamstrung by a minority member of the Republican side who, are interested in throwing some sand in the wheels. So we're gonna have a really big fight in September to keep things funded, to keep things on the road. So I think that's going to be the first priority of September. But I am broadly hopeful that we'll be able to keep the Farm Bill moving on track broadly.
Thank you. The next question, Larry Kearns. What is your position on breaching any of the Snake River dams? How do you reconcile voting against veterans support? So it's two questions.
Thank you, Larry, for the question. So I'll start with the second one about voting against veterans. I take very, very seriously our commitment and our obligation that we made a deal with veterans that we are going to provide quality care, and I don't think the VA is holding up that end of the bargain. So right now I hold the record for the most number of amendments passed by a freshman Democrat, and many of those have been on demanding accountability for the VA. So I had two amendments passed this last session we were in Congress. One of them was an amendment that said, if you are going to close down a rural, any VA facility, you have to make an assessment and a report to Congress about how many hours everybody's going to have to travel now. So we saw this huge crisis, particularly in Lewis County, where they lost their VA clinic, and now we are seeing veterans travel 2 hours to Olympia on hold for, I've heard, up to 6 hours online. And this district is interesting because some of my veterans go to the Portland VA clinic and some of them go to the Puget Sound VA. So there are 17 different regional VA. Going to the Portland VA actually felt like they were getting, many of them had much better things to say about that VA system than the Puget Sound system. But when I went to look at the data about veteran satisfaction with VAs, I was like, they will only report it at a regional level. They'll only say at this, this region that Portland reports this level. They're not reporting on a county by county level. And so what I believe was happening was that they were hiding really high satisfaction levels in Olympia with very low satisfaction levels in our rural counties, in our rural districts, in Lewis County and Pacific County. And so I got an amendment passed that said, you can't just do it at a regional. I want a county by county by county. So if you are underserving our rural veterans at the expense of our, urban, like I want to see that. And it'll also help us be able to say, what are the regions that are doing a really good job of providing care for our rural veterans? So it's not just accountability here regionally for our folks, but accountability across the country for reform in the VA system. So I'm really proud of the work that we've been doing to enhance and provide better care for our veterans. The reason that I voted against the big MilCon VA bill was because it underfunded the VA by $158 billion. It's like incredible underfunding. So we had a deal when it left committee about what level it needed to be funded at to actually provide service at the appropriate level. And then they came to the floor with something that was $158 billion short of the deal we made. And, my perspective is like, we had a deal, all right? Like, this is what they say they need, and let's do it. I'm not going to vote for something that defunds the VA. And somehow they've been able to spin this into a narrative that I voted against the VA when, I'm the one that has demanded accountability and responsiveness and really held their feet to the fire. And so that's something that I will continue to do and I take super seriously. So thank you, Larry. And then his first question about Snake River dams. So I really feel like we are still burning coal for electricity. And now is not the time to be taking green energy off of the menu that comes from our hydropower. I know that's a controversial opinion, but when you think about what it would do to our agricultural producers, the lack of alternative modes of transportation, there's just a lot of work that needs to be done that would ever, to ever, I think, open the conversation about taking those dams down. And so we haven't seen that happen, and it's important that, so it's funny because the state of Georgia actually they just identified burning tires as a source of green energy. They're calling it like recycling, they're getting electricity off of burning tires. And in Washington State, we are talking about whether or not hydropower is green energy, and we're pitting literally burning tires against hydropower. And so let's just contextualize that in a national narrative, because energy is a commodity that's, we're selling it all over the country. And so I think we need to look at the full picture of our energy supply.
Okay, so there was a question for Lorraine that was about helping veterans in rural communities that I think you answered. So if you saw me pull one out of the stack, Lorraine, that was yours. We have a question from Rose Chu Gunderson. I like the fact that you're a moderate Democrat. Is there the potential for a moderate pro-choice policy to stop the national argument so we can focus on policies that matter to ordinary people's lives?
I hope so. I hope so. I think that we've seen this real, politics has become so brand name. It's either you're this sort of plastic left or the plastic right. And if you're anything in between, you're just sort of glossed over. And both sides have a lot at stake in preventing that middle, And so I think it's really important that districts like our district, the 3rd Congressional District, we are one of the most independent districts. Like we have, this district sent the first woman from Washington State, the first Hispanic woman. Like we have a really strong record of doing what we want to do and doing what we think reflects the values of the district. And so that's really that independence from national political narratives is critical to pointing the whole country back to a place of moderation and normalcy and just talking to your neighbors for once. Because I think that this sort of polarization is actually made us really lonely as a nation. I think it's really sad that we are not with Thanksgiving has become this minefield for so many of our families, and it's really saying something thoughtful takes a lot more time than putting out a bumper sticker and treating people with respect, trying to understand what their values are, how their values align with your values. That's complicated. That work takes time, and I really hope that part of what we are doing as a district in Southwest Washington is saying, hey, we want to go back to the actual dialogue. We want to come back to the dinner table and having these conversations and having real independent thinking and legislating, really having place-based politics and not a national narrative about whatever the sort of hot button issues on Twitter are, but what really matters to our communities. So I'm hopeful. I think that people are they're getting exhausted from this, turbocharged politicization, and so I'm hopeful that we can get back to talking to each other again.
Next question from Carol Kearns. Have you heard of the issue of biosludge/biosolids being used on our fields for fertilizer, polluting the fields of our food source, polluting streams and rivers? Heavy metals stay in it even if it has been cleaned to a Class A standard, making animals sick.
Yeah, thank you, Carol, for the question. And this is one of the other issues that I really felt would be, so when I ran, I was given a 2% chance of winning my seat by the political geniuses. And I was like, well, at least I'll still be able to talk about issues that I think need more attention. And microplastics were one of those big issues. So I had a 6-month-old at the time, and I was finding out they are finding microplastics in every survey of breast milk, in placentas, in every human tissue. They are finding these little chunks of plastic, and it turns out that these little chunks of plastic actually they emit hormone disrupting chemicals that can do really weird things to people, and it's not being studied what's happening. And so it's really exciting because now it worked. I got elected, was able to put a bill forward that would actually study the effects of microplastics on farmland and farm quality, because it's not talked about enough. And the crazy thing to me is that Southwest Washington, we make cardboard and paper. We make the solution to microplastics and so many of these weird chemicals. We can just go back to having things, in cardboard and plastic, and cardboard and paper again. And it would be something that would benefit the woods. It would give a real boon to our mills, to cleaning up the woods, to reducing fuel in our woods, more jobs outside for people who work for a living. I mean, there's just all of these ancillary benefits that come from pivoting away from plastic and these toxins and going back to cardboard and paper and natural products that we grow here in our state in abundance. And again, it's one of those things where it seems like it's rural communities that are bearing the burden, because these things end up Mayor Wayne told us not to like use bad words or anything. But right, so you eat it, right? You're consuming microplastics that ends up in your poop, goes into your sewage treatment plants, and then it goes out and these biosolids are sold to farms, and we don't really know what happens then. So we want to be really careful that we are protecting farmland, that we are not that we're not just inviting a problem for rural communities down the road. So it's really important that we know the stakes of what we're doing, we know what the options are, and similarly that we're also that we're not overreacting if it's not as big of an issue as it seems like from the outside. We just need more data.
Next question from Jennifer Bethman. The safety of our kids in school is very important. Federal funds have been released to pay for security upgrades in schools. However, the grants open upgrades in schools. Not sure what the word is. The grants open to access the funds are extensive and require a grant writer. That makes the money unreachable. Well, for small school districts, how can you help get funds for school safety to small school districts? Block grants to state departments of ed.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. We see this everywhere. The dollars end up going to the agency that has the most administrative capacity for applying for the grant, and not not whoever can do the most good with the dollars. And that is the crazy-making thing. And so I was the first Democrat on a bill. It's called a Simplifying Grants Bill, to say like we need a streamlined process. We need more accountability in seeing those dollars get back to a local level. And so that is one of the avenues for sure we can streamline overall. There's a few different bills that I'm on that kind of point in that direction. I'm actually the lead on another one that we have good partnerships in the Senate also. So I'm it's always good when you have both houses working together. But you're absolutely right, and a lot of our law enforcement, we've been doing these law enforcement roundtables, and I'm hearing similar things that, like you can get federal funding for an officer to do domestic violence, but if you have 5 officers in your department, you don't need just one officer to do domestic violence. You need more flexibility in the way, like those dollars are used. You need more accessibility, and you shouldn't need to have a professional grant writer on your staff to access these dollars.
Last question is from Mr. Bob D'Amico. Do you think you have enough allies within the Ag Committee to get your right to repair bill on the table?
Thank you, Bob. This is another one of the big issues for me. And so if you're not familiar with right to repair, basically the genesis of this is that John Deere tractors started installing computer chips on their engines, and they had farmers sign these terms of service contracts that if you were only able to take your tractor to their dealerships for service, and if you wrenched on it yourself, you were going to lose your warranty. And so, for a lot of farms today, it's just incredibly debt leveraged. And so what ended up happening was these farmers all go out, they buy these like $100,000 pieces of equipment, this 1-year make and model, all blitz out the same time, it's haying season, and you only have a couple of days really to cut hay when it's got actual nutrition value for stock. It's when the seed head's formed but hasn't fallen off. And so all of these tractors blitz out, nobody can get them, there aren't enough dealerships in the region to handle them at all. And so millions of dollars of hay are lost, the price of beef goes up, and these people who are incredibly debt leveraged are looking at $100,000 yard art. I just didn't imagine that rage. And so many of them come out with their pitchforks and demand right to repair legislation. And also, by the way, many of them go to Eastern Europe and buy software to hack their tractors. Okay, so there's a real national security interest. We have had a lot of our agricultural equipment hacked at this point. But that's the alternative. Right to repair legislation tries to ensure the right we've always exercised, which is the right to fix our own stuff. Like Americans as a nation, we are really unique. My husband's of German extraction. Germans don't like paint their own walls. They don't fix their own pipes. They are highly specialized. We have DIY in our DNA. Like we do it ourselves all the time. And we are getting turned into a class of consumers. And we believe we're stewards. Like we don't want a bunch of cheap crap. Like we want things that last. We want to be able to make it last. We don't want to be dependent on a software update from somewhere else or being able to get a spot at a dealership, you know. And so this is one of those really cool issues that has unified a lot of people. People in the trades, especially the independent trades, like independent repair like us, we really see the necessity of this. People like the middle class, like me, like I said, I've never bought a new car. And I rely on a secondary market for used cars. People have to have been able to fix their cars and maintain them to have that secondary market. Like all my cars come from Craigslist, you know? People need to be able to check their own oil themselves. And you also see the environmental movement, who is really tired of seeing their landfills fill up with plastic garbage. So it's one of these opportunities that it feels like the train's leaving the station. If we let it go too much longer, we've really lost an opportunity, because wrenching and fixing and self-sufficiency is generational. Like you skip a generation and it's gone, you know? So we can't let this go much further, or we will lose this sort of family knowledge of how to do stuff. And so I am really hopeful. I actually just had the chair of the Agricultural Committee co-sponsor my right to repair legislation. He's a Republican. We've had a lot of bipartisanship on this because like it's something that matters to rural communities. And so that's really, really encouraging. That said, like none of those coalitions I mentioned, like middle class, you know, farmers, tradespeople, like we're not traditionally like big money in politics, right? Like it's hard for us to go out and influence other legislators and say co-sign on this piece of legislation, help pass this bill. So it really needs to be grassroots. It really needs to be people from the Agricultural Committee all across the country lobbying, because, you know, John Deere isn't going to come in and pay a lobbyist to explain why this is such a good idea to every other member of Congress. Like it's got to be us doing this for ourselves. So, you know, if you've got a brother-in-law in Iowa, give him a call for me. You know, if you know, we really, like, we've got to start moving and, you know, organizing on our own interests. So thank you, Bob, for the question. Thank you, Mayor Wayne, for moderating. Thank you so much to the Titan Police Department and our hosts here at the Kodiak Room. Thank you all sincerely for being here. I really appreciate the chance to talk with you all.
Thank you, Congresswoman Perez. I want to just share with everyone that, so I've been the mayor for over a decade, and in that time, we've never had a congressional visit of any sort in that whole time. So, and in the 8 months that the Congresswoman has been in office, this is your 5th official visit here. So thank you for working for us, and thank you for coming down today.